Hello and welcome back to the Ever Changing World podcast. I'm your host, Ava Zanetti, and today's episode was inspired by the huge event that just happened. If you don't live under a rock, you would have found out that the Queen has passed away only a few days ago. She passed away at the age of 96 years old, and of course, this was really, really big news, especially for all the countries that have been under British reign, and of course, everyone who is in Britain themselves, and especially the people who really love the monarchy. I know the monarchy has a lot of controversy surrounding it, for both good and bad reason, I suppose. Many people don't like the monarchy, but many people did like Queen Elizabeth, irregardless of their stance on the monarchy in general. So, of course, the news was very big, especially as she was Britain's longest reigning monarch, and she was very, very, very close to becoming the longest reigning monarch in history, though she fell short of a few years. So, of course, this is a big deal as well, since now there's a new king who's in his 70s, which is obviously very old age to become a monarch. But this a lot of the news surrounds around this. And a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of big news corporations are talking about it. And really, really, really big celebrities and people who were tied to the Queen in some way and who had met the Queen and dubbed her really important. And of course, that's wonderful. It's great. She left a legacy on this earth. But the interesting part about it all is that it's not only these people who were connected to the Queen or who were actual people, rather companies are reacting to the Queen. And this isn't a new phenomenon. Companies have taken a stance, especially on Twitter, on different subjects a ton. They have taken stances by saying, things or making jokes on Twitter, creating this almost persona as a company, which is a very, very odd concept when you really think about it. And that's what I really want to get into today. And of course, what inspired me to make this episode was, of course, being on Twitter and seeing all of this happening all of the time. But the Queen dying and seeing all these tweets and being like, okay, this is interesting. And, I kind of understand it, but I really need to talk about it because I just, I can't deal with these companies because I think it's just very odd, and I think a lot of people are glazing over the fact of how odd it is that companies will literally talk about world events like they are actual people, and I think it's just very weird that people are so used to it. And I think this is a new weird phenomenon in marketing, actually, and that's what I'm going to get into today. That's really, changing the way we see things, etc. So that's, of course, what I'll be speaking about today. And I'm going to mention some different examples and kind of this idea. Why don't we just get into it? This idea of woke capitalism. The article is just loading as I speak, so I'm going to briefly talk a little bit more. So this idea of woke capitalism is this idea that companies are using different events that seem good to, kind of seem like they're on the right side of things to then speak about, make themselves look better. And again, it's just a weird concept. And it's weird to me, at least, the point that people are making tweets about it all. But I guess the idea of creating a standpoint and creating this almost political standpoint makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. Especially when there's really, really, really big events in the world. Taking a stance is almost necessary at this point. It's not even a marketing strategy, it's necessary. And my whole stance about it, right, just to go straight out the gate, my whole stance is that, hey, you're a pizza company, or hey, you make coffee. I don't think you have any thoughts or regards on, societal issues or women's rights or, POC groups, rights like Black Lives Matter movement. I don't think a pizza company who kind of, creates pepperoni pizza for a living as much of a stance. So, when you really think about it in that way, it is odd, right? These are companies. They are selling a product or service or good to consumers. And the fact that they're doing this and then taking a political stance and being like, hey, happy Pride Month. Or, the joke always is that every company makes their logo, rainbow for the month of June and then switches it back to take this, like, hey, performative activism route where they're like, hey, I love everybody. And then, a few months later, they are, obviously, or a month later when the month is done, they don't care. And I think a lot of people do this as well, but I think it's just odd for companies to even think about doing such a thing. And maybe it's because I'm just, so removed, and all I think about companies is, hey, these guys are creating a product, they're creating a service, etc., etc. But I think that it's just odd. And I think that a lot of this will become even weirder in the future, and we're going to, kind of look back at how much companies talked on Twitter and did all of this and be like, hey, this is really weird if we really think about this. So the idea of woke capitalism, which is what I'm going to get into, is this idea, Ross Doulhart coined this term, woke capitalism, and when he was writing a piece for the New York Times. So how he defined it is he defined it as how companies signal support for progressive causes in order to maintain their influence in society. And really, he kind of tapped into this grander concept that having a big stance on something that seems morally right, or seems like the public will really enjoy it, will actually give you a lot of power. Because people will be like, hey, look, Apple loves gay people or something, right? It sounds so stupid when I say that, but, right, oh my gosh, the phone company cares about me, and then they'll want to buy more products. So it's this weird psychological thing as well that I think is very interesting. So since then, this mindset has only grown, as the largest corporations are now weighing in of almost every major and not so major public policy issue. The problem, they increasingly land on the leftist side of the issue, which is, again, the woke side of things. The left side isn't always right. I'm just going to straight out say that. I don't have a political stance, or at least I won't state my political stance. One, because I am young, and I have lots and lots of time to properly research all of that, and properly do my due diligence. As well, since I live in Canada, and I guess my political system is similar, but a bit different than the States. Though you could argue that I could take a Canadian political stance. But again, I don't want to, because I think, in all honesty, a lot of the times, each side is equally bad. Left or right, it's bad. So staying neutral, or as close to neutral as you can, is always good. Because I think it just shows general critical thinking skills. Because in general, I don't think I can agree on every single stance that one singular politician makes. And nobody should, right? Unless you are the politician that's making the statement. Nobody's going to make all the exact same statements or agree with every single thing. So usually when looking at politics, I think of more of a central term. And when doing so, I see that, right now in society, it's very left-leaning. At least, online. If you're very chronically online, which is this interesting term I'm sure I'll do another podcast episode on. If you're very chronically online, you probably see a lot of leftist media. And of course, when you go online and then you go down this rabbit hole, it's confirmation bias, which basically is just, the algorithm's gonna keep showing you content that you like and you enjoy. So if you're on left side of TikTok, you're just gonna think about the left side. You're never gonna see the right side as an argument. If you're on right, again, you're gonna do that. And then also it goes to this extremist level, right? We have crazy radical leftists on the left, and crazy QAnons on the right. And both are bad. And we don't need both. Staying neutral is always good. And usually politicians have, really strong opinionated policies, but you kind of just pick the better of the two. And obviously, when looking at presidents, at least, every single term or every single, presidential um, go through, it usually switches parties, right? We saw this. It was Obama, who was left. Then it was Trump, who was right. And then now it's Biden, who is left. So it usually just flip-flops, which makes a lot of sense. And I think seems very correct. So, that is kind of what woke capitalism is. And this idea of wokeness is, again, this idea of being more radically left than radically right. And it's very, very interesting, and I want to get a little bit more into it. I apologize. I literally just pulled up tweets other than this article, so I want to make sure I get this right, because I think this is a really good backbone. Again, it's like making more profits, you almost have to be woke. Because a lot of the, people are left-leaning, or at least believe in these specific left-leaning policies, and if a company doesn't seem like they're on the right side, then oh, shit, right? So, give me a moment here. All these articles are very, very slow to open. My laptop's been very, very slow to open today. So apologies. It's loading. So yeah, just in general, I think that, once again, it's leaning to the right, and that's fine. To the left, but I think critically, right? Again, think critically. And you can't go wrong. So, this article is from The Atlantic, if it loads correctly for me. It's still loading. Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm waiting. Promise. It's going well. It's going. Alright. So, I don't know if this article will even let me look at it, and it won't. So that's wonderful. Alright. So, again, back on the topic of woke capitalism, it's irky in some ways, right? So, in the article, this was a political analyst and author, Ross Doulhart, coined the term, again, as I mentioned. And in the article, Doulhart says there is hypocrisy at play in many big corporations. He argues that U.S. companies will often jump on the bandwagon to support a quote-unquote socially conscious movement, while doing little to advance worker rights in their firms and supply chains. So once again, it's not only that they're saying all these things, it's that they're not doing anything about it. So they'll say, oh, I don't want to use, child workers, right? Don't use child workers. And then they use, child workers in a third world country, which always makes it seem better, right? So it's a lot of hypocrisy within the space as well, which also just changes a lot of the way that, you see things. So again, does he have a point? So for Doulhart, woke capitalism is a little bit like greenwashing, which greenwashing is when companies make it look like they're really environmentally conscious just to make more money. So again, yes, it is very similar. You can see his point. We know that big brands and corporations can be quick to support movements like BLM and Me Too, while at the same time exploiting people and the environment along their supply chains. For Doulhart, woke capitalism is a smokescreen that protects corporations from any real scrutiny by certain campaign groups. By 2022, the whole world had changed as America emerged from pandemic lockdowns. Economy began to rattle back into action. Suddenly, there were issues with supply chains and problems with recruiting staff. People talked about the Great Resignation. Capitalism appeared to be in trouble, and people reacted angrily. The strong vein of reactionary populism in American politics suddenly implied that woke capitalism meant something else. In the mouths of American conservatives and right-wingers, shouting woke capitalism means jeering at any challenge to old orthodoxies and power structures. In 2022, if a politician or a commentator uses the term woke capitalism, they mean that the corporation in question has left-leaning views. For example, Florida government Ron DeSantis is targeting woke capitalism and the environmental, social, and corporate governance movement. He's proposing legislation to end ideological corporate power. So, it is a very polarizing term. And people like DeSantis talk in playground soundbites to appeal to their demographic, which is what happened to the term woke capitalism. Woke capitalism is now meant as a sneer, a broad term that hints at liberal elites and right-on activism. It is now used as a rallying call by right-wing politicians and commenters to discredit any ECG proposals relating to climate change, workers' rights, and corporate governments. So now the term has kind of hindered itself in a way, because now these really extremists on the right are saying all these other things about woke capitalism, saying that, now it's all about politics again, and companies shouldn't be political. I'm just being honest. A company should be a company, and they shouldn't even have a stance on anything. They should be a good company with good ethics, of course, but they shouldn't start rallying for things, because that's not their job. Their job is quite literally to create a product, and that's, all they should be doing. So kind of in summary, in woke capitalism, major corporations, CEOs, and billionaires publicly and financially support progressive left-wing political issues. Recent years, we've seen big business backing various politically divisive causes, causing Me Too, Black Lives Matter, same-sex marriage, climate activism, and animal rights. So basically, anything that seems like being a good person, they're going to back it up, which seems silly in a lot of ways. And again, people are kind of mad about it on the right, which happens a lot of the time with these things. So, kind of in general with this, it's like, this idea of woke capitalism is very real, and I kind of see both point. I understand why some people may want to see companies agreeing with what they say, because if they're really, really, really passionate about a certain issue, they're going to be like, hey, my favorite taco company should be accountable. They should, agree that, hey, I deserve a taco too, right? I mean, that's kind of a dumb example, but you know what I mean. And companies are now taking the stance, and it's making them more money. So, why wouldn't they do it? And then they know the people on the right will continue buying their products. So it's this really weird branding mechanism in a way. So I kind of want to move into away from woke capitalism completely, or maybe not exactly away from it. I want to talk about companies tweeting. Again, I think it's very odd that companies tweet. I understand the idea of companies having a Twitter or an Instagram and marketing themselves on there. That's great. That can get them more revenue. But the weird part to me is that these companies literally have a persona. It's like they're real people cracking jokes, like a Gen Zer, just cracking some jokes online. Some companies have TikToks, which honestly some of them are really funny. I really love the Duolingo one and the Ryanair. Those ones are really funny. But again, it's weird. If you really think about it, it's weird. Why are these companies, literally on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram and cracking jokes? And I find Twitter's a big proponent for this one, as well as the TikTok. TikTok has a lot too. And TikTok ones are pretty funny, but even though they are funny, it is a little odd that they are, kind of rallying for these things. So, this article that I'm looking at, sorry, I'm just trying to understand what article I'm looking at. This article is quite literally named every single company that, okay, this is really funny to me. I'm not going to link this one because I'm really going to briefly talk about it, but this article literally wrote down every company that agreed with the Roe vs. Wade, which if you haven't listened to the podcast episode, go listen. And the Florida Don't Say Gay law, which was another one. Which companies agreed with it, and which companies, or commented on it and were agreeing, and which companies didn't. And I think that's very odd, because again, these people really care. They're like, hey, this company has a political stance similar to mine. I should, use them. That's so weird. So I found that very interesting. So again, you can see that this idea of woke capitalism is very beneficial, and people are literally writing articles to be like, hey, Um, basically telling the world that I want to see the companies, and clearly people are going and looking at it. So, for the last little bit of today's episode, I wanted to talk about the tweets and this idea of the persona. And then I'm going to finish a little bit early. I'm going to do half an hour today, just because I think this topic can be summarized pretty quick. I talked a lot about the first bit here, so I'm not going to go into that. Just going to talk about tweets, specifically the Queen. I think that would be good. Because some of these just made me laugh about how ironic they were, how funny it was. Like a Domino's being like, hey, the Queen died. Which is just quite comical in a lot of ways. Alright. Let me see here. Okay, so Domino's commented, which I thought was very funny. And Domino's commented on this blacked out image. It was black. And then at the very top, it was a little Domino's logo. And then it said here in white text, it said, everyone at Domino's joins the nation and the world in mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Our thoughts and condolences are with the royal family. This seems like a normal tweet. But the funny part to me is I see a Domino's at the top, the Domino's logo at the top, and they're just talking about the Queen dying. And what's weird to me is, like, why are you commenting on it, right? It's like, yeah, it's sad and all of that. And I guess it was Domino's UK, so it makes a little more sense. But you make pizza. You make pepperoni pizza. And you're over here commenting on, the Queen dying. It just seems a little funny. And I think a lot of people do agree with that. So that was Domino's. Of course, very, very nice tweet over there. This one is kind of funny, actually. I really like this one. This is not a company. This is just funny. So there's a British energy company called Electricity. Nice play on words there. And the founder, Dale Vince, tweeted. So he tweeted an image of Queen Elizabeth, kind of in this, like, lime green shirt jacket, that had been replaced with a soccer shirt with the company's logo in bold letters. And then he wrote, thanks, Liz. And honestly, that's really funny. I think if companies are doing that, I mean, at least you get a good laugh out of it. But I don't know why that was controversial. Maybe people took it to heart. Another one, okay, this one is really freaking weird. Okay, this one's weird. I'm sorry, this is weird. So Playmobil, which is similar to Lego, except it's for little kids. I'm pretty sure it's just like it doesn't choke you, or it's like a knockoff Lego, something like that. In the tweet part, like the written part, they wrote, "Rest in peace," the black heart emoji, Queen Elizabeth II, 1926 and 2022. But the funny part was that they got this image of it just looks like an old grandma with, a hat, kind of a Liz's iconic hat. And they got her just standing there waving. This black and white image of a Lego, like a toy piece, just waving at the picture. And I just think that's really funny. Like, it's not even like, it's just odd that a company who makes toys is tweeting out the toy, being like, hey, love you, rest in peace. Just so funny. So Heinz also commented, the ketchup company, and they basically wrote the same thing as Domino's Pizza. But this one again makes kind of like sense because it's the UK, so in a way it's like, I guess they have to comment. But again, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's still really odd when they are commenting. And that's kind of it's a really weird and, like, just a weird, unbalanced thing where some companies at least is funny or just odd, straight out odd. Some companies are really, really just, it's just like a blanket statement, like, yeah, thanks, R.I.P. It's, Very odd. So I think those were the big ones that were in this article. I don't think there were any more. Oh, I apologize. So yeah. It is very weird. This article mentions it too. It's like people aren't gonna wake up and be like, "Oh my god, the tweet died," and be like, "Did Heinz say anything?" Or like, "Oh my god, did Domino's tweet?" Like, no, nobody cares. So I think that's the really odd part about it. So not only that, it's also weird when these brands have personas, which I might not get completely into today because I kind of skipped over a lot of it. I might do that next week since I have a lot more to say. But the weird part about the persona thing to me, and actually I'm not even going to read an article, I'm just going to talk. The really weird thing about a persona to me is that, yes, you are a company, but why do you have a personality of a 20-year-old, right? Why are you talking like you're a real person? You gotta think, again, it's like, just imagining that this thing is like a pizza, and it's just casually like, it's kind of just like, hey, I am really funny, and I make funny tweets. And I guess it's memorable in a way, too, though, but I've never thought, oh my gosh, McDonald's made that really funny tweet, I'm gonna go with McDonald's. It's like, no, I like eating McDonald's, I'm gonna go eat it. So again, I think it's just it's just this interesting marketing. It's a new wave of people, a new age of kids, and people growing up in this era where they just simply like the online. They like the it's just interesting to them. And this is getting big. So all in all, I think it is very weird that companies are becoming kind of woke, pretending that they care about societal issues when they clearly don't. And also, creating this persona where once again it's just odd. And it's not quite normal. So anyways, that wraps up today's episode. Sorry it's a little bit shorter today, but I thought it'd be a nice and sweet one. If you'd like to connect, the Instagram is always updated. It's Ever Not Changing World. Again, Ever Not Changing World. The Twitter is Ever Changing WOR. Again, Ever Changing WOR. The website is shows.acast.com/ever-changing-world. Again, shows.acast.com/ever-changing-world. Thank you so much for listening. Tune in next week for another amazing, amazing, amazing episode. And the world is always changing.